GM fam, we know a CBDC or central bank digital currency is on its way. Most of us, myself included, strongly oppose this. But let's take the flip side of this argument, just because I like making everybody mad. Could a CBDC actually be good? First of all, let's agree on this point. Yes, it could be good. El Salvador adopted Bitcoin and people cheered this. If the Fed actually released a fully decentralized, completely permissionless coin with a strict monetary supply, something in the mold of Bitcoin, we'd probably all be okay with that sort of CBDC. The main reason we don't support a CBDC is because we don't have any trust in our government, given how they've been acting lately. So we assume that a CBDC is going to be a dystopic nightmare. Fortunately, the process in front of us gives us some hope it won't be that bad. The Fed has acknowledged it has to go through Congress, and a divided Congress could severely water down the worst elements of a CBDC. We've already seen some members of Congress expressing opposition. So in this case, gridlock is great. Anti-CBDC negotiator could make excessive demands, and if these demands don't go through, we just fall back on the status quo, which is no CBDC. So you could see how this process could play out well if we get good representatives. And you can all move the needle on this front. Today, contact your local congressperson, and just for fun, contact their opponent too, and just ask them their policy on a CBDC. Say you're kind of concerned. They generally don't think that this is a campaign issue, so evolve their thinking on this. Let them know that their constituents really care about this. Now, we also think there's not a ton of mileage in straight up opposing a CBDC. We think that we can get more mileage out of building a positive movement, trying to steer this towards something good, as opposed to simply putting our foot down saying we disagree. We also think this gives us an opportunity to shift the Overton window if we articulate a really positive case for a good CBDC. So what's this positive direction? Let's consider a CBDC that looks more like Bitcoin than USDC. A CBDC would contain properties like untamperability, uncensorability, trustlessness, make it compatible with the Constitution, enforce this at the protocol layer, particularly the First and Fourth Amendments. Embed features like privacy, peer-to-peer transaction resilience. That one's a really big one. And for the US, let this be a driver of economic growth. Let this coin be something people want to use. And through its adoption, let it further US dollar dominance just because people actually like using it. Such a hypothetical coin would be more like a contract with the American people guaranteeing financial liberty for all time. This would be sort of like a modern day Magna Carta, kind of a bold, ambitious agenda. With such a positive vision, it'd be really tough for opponents to argue for their surveillance and censorship coin. Still, we're not so naive to assume that just a positive vision will be enough. So let me also propose a trade-off. Our side has to draw a hard line against censorship. Nobody is simply going to want to use a chain where their net worth can be bricked based on whether or not people support this week's current thing. Besides, this is major Fourth Amendment violations written all over it, so it's not even clear a judge would allow it. So we therefore have to draw a strict hard line in favor of the right to peer-to-peer transactions. This means no matter what other censorship cudgels are applied, maybe the government is going to be compelling your grocery store not to transact with you, but as long as you can find one ally willing to transact with you for a loaf of bread, you have the freedom to transact and you won't starve. Now, we know the US is not going to like this because they really like crushing their political enemies. But so what do they get out of this compromise if they acknowledge, okay, fine, we're not going to censor? I think that our community could accept granting the United States broad taxation powers built into the protocol layer of its own chain. Let them take some portion of every transaction and send it to the IRS. We pay miners anyway. Let's just redirect this to Uncle Sam. You could enforce this at smart contracts. It won't compile if this particular subroutine looks like enough like a security. Send the SEC its cut. We can grant them these broad transaction powers. And truth be told, this would be a much bigger opportunity for the United States as opposed to simply the minor ability to cut off people from using it that they don't like. The power to control, the flick of a switch, which transactions get taxed and at what percent. This is tremendous power for whoever is in control of this. We need to, of course, enforce a cap, no more than, say, 50% of taxation. But by and large, people are willing to use a tax chain, at least way more so than a censorship chain that could steal your net worth. I did a poll on Twitter, and the degen community that I engage with, about 5-1 in favor of tax chain. So, of course, a lot of people will still just use Ethereum. They'll bridge their Fed chain funds over to ETH however they can, which they might be able to do because they have the freedom to transact peer-to-peer. You can see how this chain, though, would actually further US goals. People might use it. It would allow them to shape the future of money, and it wouldn't necessarily be too oppressive. So I think this is a good deal for all parties. I'm throwing it out there. Feel free to tell me that you hate me. Feel free to tell me I'm an idiot. Always happy to hear that. But interested in getting this conversation going, because I think that there is room for us to turn a CBDC debate into a positive thing for our community.